About a year and a half ago, I was in New York, and I got a phone call from my brother. My brother never calls me. He's called me 3 times in 10 years. That's just, he texts. He's a text guy. So I know something's up. So I pick up the phone. I go, "Who died?" And he goes, "Dad." And I was like, someone's got a flair for the dramatic. Now, my dad left when I was really young, and we all stopped communicating with him around the age of when I was 12. But then when I got older, moved to LA, I started emailing with him. So I was the only one with a relationship, so my brother called me. So I called my wife because things aren't real until I talk to my wife. It's like that saying, I don't know what I think till I hear what I say. That's what it is. Until I tell her, and I get her on the phone, I'm like, "So listen, I think I'm gonna go home, because my dad died." And she goes, and she's not a sensitive woman, she goes, "To who?" And she's not doing it intentionally, that's just how she reacts. And I'm like, "Yeah, that's a good point, very good point." I go, "But I think I'll just go home and, I'm gonna call my aunt, and who I haven't talked to in 25 years, and see if she can call my dad's wife and see if I can just, go through his stuff." Because I thought that was a normal thing to do. Like, "Oh, you mind if I just peek around a little bit?" "Never met you before, how are you?" "All right, good." And she's like, "What are you looking for?" And I'm like, "I just want to get the end of the story. I want to finish the book, And she's like, "All right." Secretly, I was hoping I'd find a scrapbook of my whole life that he's been watching me forever. So I take the train home, and the whole time home, I'm just thinking about things I have from my dad. I only have 3 things. One was a silver penny, because history note, during World War II, they used the copper for bullets and made pennies out of silver. He's like, "I know that." So I had this one silver penny. And you remember Dylan McKay from 90210? Yeah. You thought that guy was intense? I gave that penny to my high school girlfriend when she was a freshman. I was like, "Take this, it's the only thing my dad ever gave me." She was like, "I'm just a freshman, I don't know what to do." I was an intense kid. And I was going home for my dad passed, and it was close to Father's Day, and Father's Day was always weird for me as a kid. I remember in 3rd grade we had to write Father's Day cards, and I was just standing at my chair staring at this blank paper, and everyone's like, "I love you, Dad. I'm glad we play catch." And I'm just like, "I don't know what to write, I don't see him." And Mrs. Nelson was like, "Jason, can you see me in the hall, please?" And I go out there, and she's like, "I'm so sorry," and buried my head in her tits, and I was like, "This is amazing. I hope my mom leaves." It was the first time I'm like, "What are these things?" Later in life, Father's Day became a day that I would do things by myself. I'd build something, I'd go for a hike. One year I was building something, I went to Home Depot, and as I'm leaving, this black woman goes, "Have a happy Father's Day." I go, "Oh no, I don't have any kids." And she goes, "Yeah, I know, but you and your dad." I go, "Oh no, my dad left when I was 2. And she goes, "And you'll be a better man for it." I was like, how do you say that to someone? Only a black woman gets away with that. Literally, she hugged my soul. 27 years of therapy wrapped up in one interaction at the Home Depot. Amazing. So I get home, I drive up to see my aunt, who I haven't seen in 25 years, and I get to her house and I go, "Hey," and she's like, "Hey," and I was like, "Hey." And she goes, "Do you want a drink?" And I go, "Nah, I'm good." And she goes, "We're drinking Jack on the Rocks." And I go, "Yeah, I'll have 4 of those." And she's like, "So listen, I called your dad's wife, and she knows you're coming, and she said you can go up." My dad had a workshop. He was an antique dealer, but he made sculptures. She's like, "You can go through his workshop and all that kind of stuff." And I was like, "All right, cool." And I talked to her, and then I went up and I get to my dad's house, and his wife comes to the door, and she's like, "Hi, how are you?" And I'm like, "Good." And she's like, "So, you want to go out and see his stuff?" It's weird. I never even thought what they were thinking, that some kid shows up "Hey, how you doing? Never met. Mind if I go through my dad's old shit? Thanks, appreciate it. Where's his sock drawer? You have a sock drawer anywhere nearby? That's where the good shit is." And my dad was a little bit of a weird dude. He had all these weird sculptures everywhere, he had made all these things out of stone. And I'm looking around, and I'm standing in his work room in front of his workbench, and I'm just sitting there "Oh, he stood here. He would make things here. His brain would create here. I'm a creator. That's what he would do. And this is where he'd be. We don't even have a relationship, but now I'm standing in his space. He's gone, but I'm there. I'm looking around, and there's all these weird sculptures. I'm the youngest of 4, and I started seeing 4 baby doll heads on top of each other. I'm like, 4 baby doll heads. I wonder if that's us. And then I saw another one. It was like 4 little kids lined up. And I'm like, oh, what's that? And everywhere I looked, there were just 4s. Everything was in 4. And I look up and I saw a sign. It said, tomorrow. And I was like, tomorrow you'll call your son? And then I see a baseball with 4 heads. I'm like, oh, again, maybe that's us. And I'm looking at it, and I thought back to when I was 9, I had to get a jockstrap, and there was no dad around, so I went with my mom. And my mom was sitting there with, like, this guy that worked there, and she looks at me, she goes, what size are you? And if I had known, I would have been like, average. But I didn't, so we bought a large, which was way too big. We got home, and my mother goes, why don't you try it on? And, like, I didn't know anything, so I went upstairs, and I came down in just a jockstrap. And it's my mom, my nana, my sister, like, in the kitchen. I'm like, is this right? Like a dad would take you out back and hit you a couple ground. Is like, is it pinching? Does it pinch? All right. No, my mother walked over to it and knocked on it to make sure it worked. She goes, oh, that'll be fine. I'm like, I'll never wear that again. Thanks. So I'm sitting there in the kitchen looking at that sculpture, thinking of that, being like, dude, you could have just come to a game, you psychopath. You didn't need to make some damn sculpture. Then I couldn't take it anymore. I look at the woman, I'm like, I can't take this. And I walked into the living room. I start looking around, and there's a bunch of penises. Penis sculptures everywhere. I'm like, oh, he was into big dicks too. And my dad's wife comes out, and she's like, you know, it's nice that you came, and I'm glad you could find some stuff. And I go, you don't think he was tormented? And she's like, no, I don't think so. I go, there's a penis with a fish hook through it. You don't think that's anything? She's like, oh, I never even thought of that. I'm like, oh, really? Every day I would be like, what the fuck is that? That would have been the only thing I was thinking. And she's like, no, I just never really, you know. And like, I was so close to asking, like, did he talk about me? Did he have anything? Like, just waiting for her to be like, well, he did have this scrapbook of all your stuff and all your accomplishments. But all she said was, she goes, you know, he had his own apartment because he didn't like living here because of my son. And I go, oh, really? And she's like, yeah, do you want to go look at it? I'm like, yeah, of course. So I go to his apartment, which is in an old schoolhouse. And he lives downstairs and some other guy lived upstairs. And I go to open the door, and I do. And the only sound is a fish tank in the corner of the room that's 1/4 full. And it's just like the filter's going. And I was like, how long ago did he die? Like, keep the fish tank going. It was 2 days, but it looked like it had been 4 months with the condition of the fish tank. There was just like books over here on silver coins and like all antique books, and the place looked decrepit, like he was living in squalor, you know. Then I went into the living room and I was like just looking, like maybe there's a picture of me somewhere. Is there anything here for me? Nothing. I go into this other room where he packed up and shipped his antiques, and then I went into his bedroom, and there were like the EMT rippings from where like he had died. And I went and stood where he died. I'm like, maybe I'll have a release and let go here. So I just stood there. I'm like, well, this is where he died. Didn't feel a thing. Look over in the bureau, see 4 little statues of kids. I'm like, Jesus Christ, guy. Unbelievable. Did you die looking at those? And I just kept looking for that release, like something to show me that he cared about me or us. And there was nothing there, you know? There's just nothing. So I went back to my aunt, gave her the key, flew back to LA, and 2 months later, my wife and I and our son, my wife is pregnant with our daughter, we were coming back to that same area for vacation. And I said to her, I'm like, hey, when we get here, I want to take you to the antique store where my dad worked and meet the people that he worked with. And she's like, okay. So we get there, and my son finds some toys and starts playing with the toys. And I'm like, all right, I'll buy him this toy. And I go up to the front, and I go, hey, the owner's here? Like, I go to pay for it, and she's like, no, they're not. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, just this. And I look over, and there's a memorial of my dad, 2 pictures of my dad. And I grab one, and I start walking over my son. And I don't know what's going through her head. She's like, what's this guy? Who takes a memorial? You're not supposed to touch memorials. So I take it, and my son's down playing with the toys, and I just show him the picture, and immediately he starts laughing hysterically. Like, my job is to make people laugh. And the one time he's ever seen my dad, he starts laughing, and I start bawling my eyes out. And I pick him up, and my wife starts hugging me, and she's bawling her eyes out. And I'm thinking to myself, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the kid who didn't have a dad. I was the dad to this boy and that girl. And I felt so amazing, and I felt so loved. And I looked over her shoulder at the woman working there, and she's just staring at us like, who the fuck are these people?